Okay, let's just jump right into this. 6 weeks ago, this whole thing with Iran kicked off. And, there was this idea in some circles that it would be a really quick victory. Well, fast forward to today, and that optimism has pretty much evaporated. The initial strategy seems to have completely stalled out, the whole situation has gotten way more complicated, and now, in what looks like a moment of sheer desperation, a new, incredibly high-stakes plan has been put into play.
So here is the big question, right? The Trump administration has basically decided to play its ace in the hole, this so-called double blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. The idea is to squeeze Iran until it gives in. But is this going to be the move that finally brings Iran to the table? Or could this whole thing just backfire in a massive, spectacular way for the US and, well, the entire world? Let's break it all down.
So, after 6 weeks of what a lot of people are calling a failed war, things have escalated a lot. America's allies are getting hit with missiles, and in response, the U.S. has rolled out this brand new tactic. And it's not just any old blockade. They're calling it a double blockade, and it's all focused on one of the most important shipping lanes on the entire planet.
To really get what's at stake here, you've got to understand the Strait of Hormuz. At its skinniest point, it's just 50 kilometers wide, sitting right there off the coast of Iran. But get this, a full 20% of all the world's oil and gas flows right through that tiny little channel. It is literally the planet's energy jugular. And it's been the center of this whole conflict from day one. Now, how did we even get here? It's pretty wild, actually. So Iran, feeling the pressure, started using the strait to its advantage. They set up what was essentially a toll gate. If you're an ally, like China, hey, you pass for free. But if you're a neutral European nation, you've got to pay a fee. The Trump administration jumped all over this, calling it financial terrorism, and used that as the justification for their next move, a complete double blockade. The thinking seems to be, if we can't use it, then nobody can.
So the big question is this some kind of brilliant 4D chess move, or is it just a desperate, half-baked idea? Let's really dig into the logic, or maybe the lack of logic, behind this entire strategy.
On paper, the American plan sounds almost simple. The whole idea is to just cut off Iran's money supply, which is its oil exports. The US figures Iran only has about 2 weeks of storage space. So the theory is, if they can't ship any oil out for more than 2 weeks, they'll have to shut down their wells. And the endgame? A crippled Iran will have absolutely no choice but to come crawling to the negotiating table. Well, that's the theory anyway. But here's where things get a little messy. This wasn't some carefully thought out secret strategy. Nope. The entire policy was announced, like so many others, in a tweet from Donald Trump. The U.S. Navy then had to scramble to put out a statement clarifying what it all meant, saying they'd only stop ships coming from Iran or those that paid the so-called toll. It really gives you the sense that this was an impulsive, off-the-cuff decision, not some grand, calculated move.
And this is exactly where that impulsiveness could have some really, really serious consequences. See, a move like this doesn't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't just hurt Iran. It sends a massive shockwave through the entire global economy. And the blowback could end up hurting the US and its allies a whole lot more than it hurts Iran. Let's just run through some of the big reasons why this is seen as such a bad idea. First, you can't just assume Iran will take this lying down. They can retaliate in ways that are hard to predict. Second, you squeeze 20% of the world's oil, you're going to send a shock through the whole system. Third, insurance costs for any ship going through that region, they're going to go through the roof. Fourth, there's a real fear this could tip the world into a recession. And finally, something that people are already feeling at home, fuel prices in the US have already shot up. This is just going to pour gasoline on that fire.
But maybe the single biggest blind spot in this whole plan is China. Did anyone in the administration stop and think about how Beijing would react to having its main oil supplier just cut off? We're talking 80 to 90% of Iran's oil exports go straight to China. The idea that China would just sit back and let this happen? Well, a lot of analysts think that's a huge, huge miscalculation.
And guess what? The challenge is already happening. We're getting reports that a Chinese-sanctioned tanker has already sailed right through the blockade. And that raises a massive question. If the US can't or won't stop Chinese ships, what's the point? The whole policy doesn't just fail. It becomes a massive public humiliation.
Okay, so the global economy is going to take a hit, for sure. But there is one country that is in a uniquely bad spot, a country that's probably going to feel the pain from this more than almost anyone else. And that country is India. This table right here, it tells the whole story. Politically,
China can stand up and openly criticize the U.S. India, as a key U.S. partner in the Quad, it can't really even protest. Supply-wise, China's got other energy sources. But India, over half of its fuel and cooking gas comes through the Strait of Hormuz. And here's the real kicker. After a 7-year break, India had just started buying cheap oil from Iran again, reportedly at America's request to keep prices stable. And now, that lifeline is just gone.
So what does this actually mean for the average person in India? It means your government doesn't really have a voice to object. It means that access to affordable oil is gone. And it means a massive price spike is coming for essentials like cooking gas and fuel. This isn't some abstract geopolitical chess match. It's a real crisis that's going to hit millions of families right in the wallet.
All right, let's just take a step back for a second. 6 weeks ago, the stated goal of this whole conflict was regime change in Tehran. But in what is just a stunning turn of events, the conversation about regime change is still happening. But now, the focus is on Washington.
And this one number pretty much explains why. Donald Trump's approval rating has apparently plummeted to a net negative of 43%. Now, just to give you some historical perspective, in his final week before he resigned, Richard Nixon's approval was at a net negative of 42%. This suggests that this conflict is deeply, and I mean deeply, unpopular with the American public.
And then this quote from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just poured gasoline all over that fire of public anger. I mean, just think about what he's saying here. The Vice President of the United States reported to him, just like other people in the administration do every single day. The very idea of an American vice president reporting to a foreign leader, well, that's politically explosive, to say the least. And here's the result of all that. A lot of American voters who put Trump in office on his promise of no new wars are now feeling like he's just acting in Israel's interests. This has created this profound sense of betrayal among many in his base, who feel like he's dragged the country into a war that doesn't serve America's priorities, but someone else's. All of this has led to some really serious questions about the president's stability. We're seeing more and more calls to invoke the 25th Amendment, which is the process for removing a president who is deemed mentally unfit. And his recent behavior, threatening to wipe out an entire civilization, insulting the Pope, even tweeting a picture that compared himself to Jesus Christ, has only fueled those concerns. A recent poll found that 61% of Americans now believe he has become erratic. So we really have to end with this question. The whole point of this, we were told, was regime change in Iran. But after a tough military campaign, a hugely controversial blockade, and what appears to be a total collapse in public support, the person who might be facing a real political reckoning might not be in Tehran at all. It might be in Washington, D.C. Who is truly on the brink? That's the question this whole crisis leaves us with.